Okay, so we hear a lot about AI, like taking over those everyday tasks, like maybe customer service, things like that.
Right.
But something that's kind of happening a little bit more behind the scenes and maybe even more fundamentally is how AI is like working its way into the top levels of leadership
Yeah,
in companies all across North America.
absolutely.
It's really interesting to see how it's going from just like this helpful tool to actually having a real part in making big decisions.
Yeah, yeah. It's not just like we're upgrading the software or something,
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually like a real change in how these huge companies are being run.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today,
Right.
right? You've given me some really interesting stuff to look at that really examines this whole growing role of AI, like right there in the executive suite.
Hmm.
So what we're going to do in this deep dive is really unpack that and pull out like the most important insights
Yeah.
and try to understand like what does this shift actually mean?
I think if we zoom out for a second,
Hmm.
the core question we're really getting at is like, how is AI fundamentally changing the way these top leaders are making decisions?
Right.
And then like, what does that mean for the future of work? And even like what leadership even is,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as always, we're basing all of this on like solid information,
Of course.
articles, research,
Right.
the kind of stuff that really helps us go beyond, just the headlines
Yeah, get into the detail.
and really understand what's happening.
Oh,
So
well.
let's get into it.
Okay.
Because this isn't just about making data entry more efficient, right?
No, no.
This is about like a real change in who has influence at the very top.
For sure. And right off the bat, I think what's so interesting is just the speed at which this is all happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
AI is very quickly moving beyond just automating simple tasks
Mm-hmm.
to actually shaping the direction that these big companies are going in.
Yeah, there was a quote that really stuck out from Dr. Elaine Chen at the AI Leadership Institute at the University of Toronto, and she said, AI isn't just helping executives make decisions. In some cases, it's making significant decisions with minimal human oversight,
Wow.
which is kind of a big deal, right?
It is. And the other thing, too, is that it's not just like happening in one industry.
Right.
The stuff that we looked at showed how it's really picking up speed across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Finance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, like it's everywhere.
Yeah, and that statistic from that McKinsey survey is like impossible to ignore.
I know.
68% of North American executives are using AI to help them make these big strategic decisions,
It's huge.
which is a massive jump from just 3 years ago when it was only 22%.
Yeah, that's not just like a little trend.
Mm.
That's a real shift.
Yeah, so let's look at some specific examples of how this is actually playing out,
Okay.
in the real world and in the C-suite.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, so when you think about strategic planning and risk assessment, this is where AI's ability to, crunch tons of data
right.
becomes really, really important.
Yeah.
Basically, you have these AI systems that use really complex algorithms to figure out, what's connected to what and what might happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing this with these huge data sets.
Yeah.
Things like spotting tiny connections between economic indicators that a human analyst might completely miss.
Yeah.
And because of this, they can find patterns and like weird things that are happening that human teams would never be able to find.
Right.
Especially not in the same amount of time.
Yeah, it makes sense that companies like RBC and Goldman Sachs would be using AI to like really get a good grasp on those market risks and potential opportunities.
Right, exactly. It's like sifting through tons and tons of financial information.
Yeah, but the Hudson Bay Company example was pretty interesting too, right? AI was analyzing things like how people are spending their money, all those complicated logistics of the supply chain, and even what their competitors are doing.
Yeah.
And it was basically using all of that to come up with their quarterly strategic recommendations.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild. And apparently the executives are actually listening to these recommendations for the most part.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how much they're actually relying on these insights from AI.
Yeah.
And it shows that their view of this information is changing too.
Right.
It's not just like extra data anymore. It's like fundamental advice.
Absolutely. And it's not just about like the big picture strategy.
Right.
AI is also getting involved in like the nitty-gritty details of how companies work.
Yeah.
Like how resources are allocated and how budgets are set up. 3M is a good example of this.
Yeah.
They're using AI to look at past performance data projections of what the market might do and all sorts of internal stuff to recommend exactly how their budget should be split up across different departments and different projects.
The quote from 3M's CIO, Michael Hernandez, was really
Oh,
interesting.
yeah. What did he say?
He said, our AI doesn't just crunch numbers, it weighs complex trade-offs and opportunity costs that would take a team of analysts weeks to evaluate,
Wow.
which really shows just how powerful AI can be when it comes to making these really big decisions.
It's incredible how quickly AI can figure out these complicated scenarios,
Yeah.
you know?
Imagine all the time that's saved
Yeah,
and how much better resources can be used when you can do all these complex calculations so quickly.
absolutely.
But then we get into an area that might make some people a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
Personnel decisions.
Yeah.
Our sources mentioned that AI is being used to, assess how well executives are performing, identify potential candidates for promotion, and even give recommendations on how compensation should be structured.
It definitely brings up some really important ethical questions about how this technology is used.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore the potential for data-driven insights when it comes to managing talent.
Right.
A good example is Microsoft.
Yeah.
They have AI that looks at how middle managers are doing across a whole bunch of different metrics.
Okay.
Things like how many projects they're completing, how satisfied their team members are.
Uh-huh.
And then it makes suggestions about who should be promoted, who should be moved to a different position,
Right.
and who needs some extra training.
Sarah Williams, Microsoft's VP of HR, pointed out how accurate these AI recommendations have been at predicting who's going to be successful in senior roles.
Wow. So it's like AI can spot things in performance data that humans might miss.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how AI is going beyond just analyzing market trends to actually analyzing the people who work within these organizations.
Exactly.
So now let's kind of zoom out a bit and look at the big picture.
Okay.
Why are so many companies embracing AI at this level?
Yeah. What are the big advantages that are making this so attractive to these leaders?
Well, obviously, speed and efficiency are huge factors, right?
Right, of course.
David Chen, the CEO of Advantage, talked about how AI has taken their strategy team's workload from weeks down to just hours,
Wow.
which lets them react to market shifts almost instantly.
Yeah, in today's world where everything is changing so fast, that kind of flexibility is a major advantage.
Right, and it's amazing how much AI is shortening the time it takes to make these really important decisions.
Yeah. Companies can adapt and respond so much faster now.
Right, and then there's the potential to reduce cognitive bias.
Yeah.
Patricia Garcia, the CFO at Scotiabank, made a great point.
What was that?
She said AI doesn't have an ego,
Okay.
and it doesn't get emotionally attached to specific projects or initiatives.
Yeah, that's the big one.
So the ability to make decisions based solely on the data
Right.
without all those human biases
Yeah.
is a huge advantage.
Yeah, cognitive bias.
Yeah,
Those are like the little errors in our thinking that we don't even realize are there,
right.
and they can really mess with our decisions.
Yeah, it's like when we favor information that just confirms what we already believe.
Right, exactly.
So having AI that can provide a more objective perspective is really valuable.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's AI's amazing ability to recognize patterns.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the example of Walmart Canada?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They found this connection between weather patterns in Southeast Asia
Right.
and disruptions to their supply chain,
Oh,
something their human teams had totally missed.
Yeah, it's like AI can just sift through all this data
Right.
and make connections that are just beyond what our brains can handle.
Exactly. So it
Yeah.
can find these really subtle relationships
Yeah.
that lead to valuable insights and a real competitive edge.
Absolutely.
But of course, even with all these benefits,
Yeah.
some real concerns to think about.
Of course, it's not like this transition to an AI-driven executive suite is going to be totally smooth.
Right, exactly.
The big one is accountability and transparency. Like, if AI recommends a big strategic decision and it turns out to be a disaster for the company,
Right.
who's responsible?
Professor Mark Johnson from Harvard Business School brought up the point that our legal and regulatory systems haven't really caught up with this new reality.
Right, it's a tricky situation.
Yeah, like who do you hold accountable when an algorithm makes a decision
Yeah.
that has these huge consequences?
And then there's the whole black box problem with some of these AI systems.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's really hard to understand how they actually arrived at their decisions.
Yeah, it's like they're a mystery.
Even the people who design them sometimes don't fully get it.
Right.
And that makes it really tough to know why a certain recommendation was made,
Uh-huh.
and even harder to learn from any mistakes.
Then there's the worry about relying too much on AI and losing that crucial human judgment.
Right.
AI is amazing at data analysis, but some people worry that it doesn't have the same intuition.
Right. And deep understanding of context that experienced human leaders bring to the table.
Like sometimes you need more than just data to make a good decision.
Exactly.
You need wisdom and a sense of all those factors that can't really be measured.
Yeah. You have to think about the bigger picture sometimes.
Right. So it's really important for humans to stay involved in the decision-making process
Absolutely.
and make sure those AI recommendations are carefully reviewed and assessed.
Especially when it comes to those really complex strategic issues.
And the last concern we should touch on is competitive homogenization.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Well, if a lot of companies start using similar AI tools trained on similar data,
Good.
could that lead to a lack of strategic diversity in the market?
Oh, interesting.
William Zhang from Boston Consulting Group suggested that real innovation often comes from thinking outside the box
Yeah.
and taking risks that might go against the data.
Right. And that's not really something AI is designed to do.
Right.
That's a good point. If everyone starts making the same data-driven decisions,
Yeah.
it could stifle creativity
Right.
and the kind of disruptive strategies that lead to real breakthroughs.
So given all these advantages and these risks, what's the best way forward?
Yeah.
It seems like most experts are in favor of some kind of close collaboration between human executives and AI systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like a partnership.
Exactly. The concept of the augmented executive seems to be the most popular and the most promising approach.
I like that.
It's not about replacing human leadership with AI.
Right.
It's about creating this partnership where AI does the heavy lifting with data analysis and generates recommendations. And then human executives provide the context, the strategic insights, and ultimately make the final decisions.
That makes sense.
Jennifer Roberts, the CEO of American Express Canada, put it well when she said she sees AI as a really valuable team member, not a replacement for human leadership.
It's all about balance, right?
Right.
Using the strengths of both humans and machines to get the best results.
And for this to really work, there's a growing understanding that business leaders need what's being called AI literacy.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, they don't have to become AI engineers themselves, but they need to understand the basics of how these technologies work, what they can do, and what their limitations are.
So they can use them effectively.
Right. Dr. Chen from the University of Toronto stressed that executives need to be able to ask the right questions, interpret the recommendations that AI gives them, and know when to override those recommendations based on things that AI might not fully understand.
Like a new essential skill for leaders in this day and age.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see that top business schools like Rotman and Harvard are offering programs specifically designed to teach senior leaders about AI.
That's really cool.
It shows that people are realizing how important these skills are for effective leadership in the future.
So looking ahead, what are some of the big trends that you see happening in this whole intersection of AI and executive leadership?
Well, one big one is the development of AI systems that have greater levels of emotional intelligence.
Wow.
Which could be really helpful for managing those complex relationships with stakeholders.
Yeah.
And navigating all the intricacies of how organizations work.
Yeah, it would be a game changer.
And then another key area is embedding ethical reasoning frameworks directly into AI decision-making systems.
That's so important.
It's pretty advanced to think about AI understanding human emotions and responding in the right way.
Yeah.
But it could really revolutionize how executives interact with their teams, clients, and other stakeholders.
Yeah, and having AI that can make ethical decisions would be crucial for navigating those tricky judgment calls that leaders have to make all the time.
Right.
It's not always clear cut, you know?
And we're also seeing AI being developed that can actually learn and adapt based on feedback from human executives.
So it's like they're constantly learning?
Yeah. Which means they can become smarter and more aligned with the specific values and strategic goals of an organization over time.
Wow.
Dr. Michael Chen from MIT talked about the holy grail of AI being able to balance the interests of shareholders and other stakeholders.
Which is a really tough thing to do.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex, but it could totally change how companies are governed.
Right.
And Thomas Wilson, the CTO at TD Bank, talked about how their AI systems are learning not just from all that data, but also from the experience and wisdom of the people within the organization.
I love that.
Which really shows how human-AI collaboration can lead to continuous improvement.
Absolutely. So to sum it all up, It's clear that AI isn't just a tool anymore.
Right.
It's becoming a major player in how the biggest companies are making their most important decisions.
Yeah, it offers incredible speed efficiency
Yeah.
and this unique ability to see patterns that humans might miss.
Absolutely.
But it also raises big questions about accountability,
Yeah.
the role of human judgment in leadership.
Right. And even the future of how companies compete with each other.
It seems like the best way forward is this model of human-AI collaboration.
Right. The augmented executive.
Yeah.
Where both sides are working together.
Right.
And using their strengths to the fullest.
And for that to really work, business leaders need to keep developing their AI literacy.
Right. It really makes you wonder what the future of leadership is going to look like.
It does.
So for you, the listener,
Yeah.
think about this.
Okay.
What are the implications of all these changes for leadership in your industry or your career?
That's a good question.
As AI becomes even more integrated into executive decision-making,
Yeah.
will the ability to work effectively with these intelligent systems
Right?
become like the defining characteristic of a successful leader?
It really makes you think.
It's a big question to consider.
It is.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, this was great.
Till next time.
See you. Bye.